guys, Platinum Cards in the house, and today I'm coming to you with my Timelord deck build. So before we get started, please like, comment, and subscribe, and without further ado, let's get started. So firstly, I like to play 2 copies of Camion the Timelord. Now this card is really good because if it battles, then immediately after that battle, you can have your opponent's attack. And this card is probably the best way for you to lower your opponent's life points, but I only run 2 because you can keep halving and halving and halving, but you're not going to be able to end your opponent because eventually he's going to go to 50, then he's going to go to 25 life points. So that's why I run other types of Time Lords as well. Next, I like to run 3 copies of Camion the Time Lord. Now, Zaphion's effect is pretty cool too. Its effect is, cannot be special summoned from the deck. If you control no monsters, you can special summon this card without attributing. Now, that effect is shared pretty much with all the Time Lords. Cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects, also shared with most of the Time Lords. You take no battle damage from attacks involving this card, also with most of the Time Lords. At the end of the battle phase, if this card battles, shuffle all spells and traps your opponent controls into the deck. If this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can draw 1 card. Once per turn during your standby phase, shuffle this card into the deck. That last part is also shared by most of the Time Lord cards. So if this card battles, you can shuffle your opponent's spells and traps. So that's really, really good. Next, I like to run 2 copies of Camion the Time Lord. Camion the Time Lord, I'm going to skip over the effect that we've already read. At the end of the battle phase, if this card battled and your life points is less than 4,000, your life points become 4,000. So this is pretty good recovery. Next, I like to play 2 copies of Camion the Time Lord. Camion's effect is, if at the end of the battle phase, if this card battled, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the attack of 1 monster your opponent controls. So this is usually how I win. I like to play Camion as my starter, and there's a way to search them. You'll see them in a little bit. There's a way to search them, so I usually go with this and try to have my opponent's attacks until they're around 2,000, and then I try to get this out because my opponent will usually have something with 2,000 or more, and then I will go for game. Next, I play 1 copy of Camion the Time Lord. Camion's effect is, if this card battles, shuffle all cards from your opponent's graveyard into the deck. Once per turn, your opponent draws a card. Inflict 1,000 life points to your. When your opponent draws a card, inflict 1,000 life points to your opponent. Now, this one is a double-edged sword. One, because all the stuff in the graveyard goes back into the deck, so they can preserve for your opponent. But every turn, your opponent is going to be losing 1,000. So that's why I only run 1. Next, I like to play 1 copy of Camion the Time Lord. It's Camion the Time Lord, actually. And this card's effect is, at the end of the battle phase, if this card attacked or was attacked, return as many monsters on the field as possible to the hand other than this card. If you do, inflict 300 damage to your opponent for each card returned. During the end of the standby phase, shuffle this into the deck. Now, this card can be good for a W when your opponent has very, very little life points, but the fact that it only does 300 per card, that's the only reason why I only run 1 of these. Next, I like to play 1 copy of Camion the Time Lord. This thing's effect is, at the end of the battle phase, if this card battle, inflict 2,000 to your opponent. This is another way I like to win as well. Straight 2,000 damage. I like to play 1 copy of Camion the Time Lord. Camion's effect is, if this card battle, shuffle as many cards your opponent controls as possible into the decks and draw equal number. It's basically, it just resets the whole board. It's really nice. Next, I like to play 1 copy of Camion the Time Lord. Camion the Time Lord, its effect is, this card battle, shuffle 1 card your opponent controls into the deck, and if you do, inflict 500 damage to your opponent. Neither players can activate cards or effect in response to this card's activation. Now, this card is decent at best, but you never know when it comes in handy. That's why I do play 1 of these. Next, I like to play 3 copies of Time Maiden. So that's 3. Time Maiden's effect is, if you control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. That's very useful because most of the time you won't be controlling monsters when it's your turn. This card can be treated as 2 tributes for a tribute summon of a Time Lord monster. You can tribute this card, add 1 Time Lord monster with 0 attack to your hand. So most of the Time Lords have 0 attack. So I can special summon this, and then I can tribute it to add a Time Lord to my hand. And then if I control no monsters, which I will because I just tributed that card, I can then normal summon Michi on the Time Lord and then go and do half damage to my opponent. So not a bad combo. But let's read the second part of this effect. So if this, you can banish this card from your graveyard, special summon one Time Lord monster with 0 attack from your deck, ignoring its summoning conditions. You cannot special summon other monsters the turn you activate this effect. If you're running Time Lords, you need to run 3 of these, because this is probably the best searcher in the entire game for Time Lords. I think it might be the only one, actually, but still, it gets the job done. Next, I like to play 3 copies of Mystic Mine. If you play this, everyone's going to hate you. That's just a fact, but oh my goodness, does this feel good to play. Mystic Mine is very useful in this deck because you will either have 1 card on the field or you will have 0 cards on the field most of the time. There are certain situations where you will have more, but that's very rare, and that's why Mystic Mine is very good for this deck. I also like to play 3 copies of Pot of Duality. You can draw your top 3 cards and you can choose 1 to add to your hand. That's always useful to get a specific Time Lord to your hand. Next, I like to play 3 copies of Advanced Draw. Advanced Draw's effect is you contribute 1 face-up level 8 or higher monster you control, draw 2 cards. So this is very useful because, let's say I've already attacked with this Time Lord, and it's going to be shuffled into my deck on my next standby phase. So I can then use Advanced Draw to tribute it anyway and then draw 2 cards. And the fact that it's in the graveyard actually helps this deck out with some of the trap cards that I'm going to show you later. Next, I also like to play 3 copies of Celestial Transformation. Celestial Transformation is pretty dope as well. You can special summon 1 fairy type monster from your hand, have the attack of that monster, and destroy it during the end phase. So you can special summon any fairies. Most of the Time Lords are fairies, so you can special summon pretty much all of them. Half its attack, half its 0 is just 0, so that doesn't matter. Destroy it at the end phase, and then it can have some uses in the graveyard that we'll discuss when we get to the trap cards. Next, I like to play 1 copy of Foolish Burial. Now that is useful just for getting this into the graveyard and then banishing it to special summon a Time Lord. Also like to play a copy of 1 for 1. It's also very useful for pulling Time Maiden out. I also like to play Terraforming just to search my Mystic Mines. I like to play 1 copy of Harpy's Feather Duster. In my experience, the biggest problem this deck has had is cards that can negate effects, and a lot of times those are spells and traps. So this card really stops that. Next are the trap cards. So I like to play 3 copies of Empty Machine. Empty Machine's effect is the first time this face-up card in the field would be destroyed by opponent's card effect, it is not destroyed. Once per turn, you activate 1 of these effects. Discard 1 level 8 or level 10 monster, draw 1 card, so that's Time Lord. So you can just pretty much discard any Time Lord to draw a card. And then if this is the only card in your spell or trap zone, target 1 Time Lord monster in your graveyard, shuffle it into the deck, and then you can set 1 Infinite Machine directly from your hand or deck. So this is a good card, as we'll see. Next, we go into 2 copies of Infinite Machine, the card that was just mentioned on Empty Machine. So after this thing's effect, I can set an Infinite Machine, and then Infinite Machine's effect will pop off. Its effect is you can activate this card by sending 1 face-up Empty Machine from your spell and trap zone to the graveyard. So you need to have this on the field, and then this card's effect will search this, and then you can destroy this to play this. So not bad. Its effect is once per turn, you can activate 1 of these effects. During the main phase, special summon 1 Time Lord monster from your hand. And then secondly, you can target 1 Time Lord monster in your graveyard, shuffle it into the deck. Then you can send 1 infinite light directly from your hand or deck. So as you're seeing here, the Time Lords in the graveyard are actually pretty useful for these trap cards. So that's why I like to use those other spell cards that like to dump Time Lords into the graveyard. Almost last, I play 1 copy of Infinite Light. Now, Infinite Light is searched by Infinite Machine, which in turn is searched by Empty Machine. So this will search this, and this will search this. So this thing's effect is activate this card by sending 1 face-up Infinite Machine from your spell and trap zone to the graveyard. This face-up card cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects, so it's just immune unless it gets banished. Neither player can target Time Lord monsters you control with card effects, or return Time Lord monsters from the field to the deck. Once per turn, if you control no monsters, you can special summon up to 1 Time Lord monster each from your hand, deck, and graveyard with different names, ignoring summoning conditions. Now this busts Time Lords because 1, their weakness is that they get shuffled back into the deck, but now they're no longer shuffled back into the deck. And if by some chance you happen to only have 1 or nothing on the field, you can summon 3. That's broken. 3 Time Lords will instantly win you the game if you summon the right ones. Last trap card I play. You can also choose to play 2 copies of Infinite Light if you really want. I like to stay a little bit diverse. I play 1 copy of Summon Limit. Neither player can summon more than 2 times per turn. Negated summons count toward this limit. Negated card effects that would summon do not count. So Summon Limit is very good combo in this deck because most of the Time Lords you can just special summon from your hand, right? And the biggest thing, maybe you can have 2 summons. So let's say I special summon this, tribute it in order to summon a different Time Lord. That would be my 2 summons, and then I declare an attack and I'm pretty much done. This will stall your opponent to no end. This wins you the game. So anyway, guys, that was my Time Lord build. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. And oh my goodness, look at the time.
It's time to do